Now, good evening, everybody. You are at the webinar Get Amped, the basics of electrifying your home, the what, why, and how of home electrification. My name is Sean Rodine, and I'm here with my colleague. Do you want to introduce yourself, Matthew?
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Douglas May, also with the Center for Energy and Environment, and I manage our Electrify Everything program.
And as I said, my name is Sean Rodine, and you've been getting some emails from me. And I work for the Center for Energy and Environment, and we are part of Electrify Everything Minnesota. And this webinar is also sponsored by Hennepin County. Let's see. Okay, there it goes. So we have a pretty full agenda tonight. We got the recording done already. We're starting with the welcome. Then we'll talk about what exactly is electrification, what it means, what our definition is. We'll move on to weatherization and why weatherization is really important and crucial to electrification. We'll talk about heating, which is also a big component. We'll discuss other appliances having to do with electrification, how and if you might need to get electrification ready in your home. And we'll talk about resources that are available for you to do all this. Now, you'll probably have a lot of questions, and there will probably be quite a few people by the time everyone joins on this webinar. So we encourage you to put your questions in the chat throughout, especially if they're clarifying questions about a term that you see on the screen, or if you don't quite understand everything, we want people to understand as they follow along. And we will also have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. And those questions would be more, I guess, substantive questions or questions that might be particular to your home or um, your situation. So save those for the end of the presentation, and we'll try to get through the material so we can get those addressed. And you may also see your question addressed throughout the presentation. So hold on, it's a lot of information. So what is electrification anyway? I did say we would define it and talk about what it is. So we define electrification as replacing fossil gas or natural gas equipment and appliances with electrically powered options. So that includes things that boilers, gas-powered furnaces, water heaters, things like that for more efficient, we'll talk about how efficient, but electric alternatives. And Electrify Everything aims to support the gradual electrification of single-family homes to promote resident health and climate sustainability through education, like the webinars that we're doing now, one-on-one support, which we provide, and we refer people to resources that can help provide that support, and financial resources and contractors. Now, we emphasize gradual because we know that, well, one, a lot of these projects are quite large and you don't do them very often, and they're also pretty expensive. So people generally phase these in. And so this takes a series of years. And so we're here to support that gradual electrification for people who are interested in doing that for the reasons on the screen. Now, why would we want to electrify? What are the reasons for electrification? Well, one reason is that there are growing options to use clean electricity. And in fact, the electric grid is getting cleaner and cleaner as coal generation is retired and more renewables are scaled up. And in fact, in Minnesota, the grid, the goal is to be 100% carbon free by 2040. And right now, the Minnesota grid is at about 54% of its electricity coming from carbon-free sources. So the electricity and the grid, the mix, are getting cleaner and cleaner as time goes on, and we make those changes. Second reason is that using electricity is safer. Electric appliances remove common hazards of gas equipment in your home, like indoor air pollution and combustion hazards. There have been more studies and research coming out that show that some of those pollutants, indoor air pollutants, that come from gas appliances have adverse effects on, so above all, child health and child health outcomes. And so electric appliances don't have those hazards. So and they also don't run the risk of possibly exploding. It might be a pretty remote possibility, but that does happen sometimes. So we remove those hazards by electrifying. Another reason is that electricity rates are more stable. So electricity rates historically grow at an incremental pace, while fossil fuel prices have had much more fluctuation historically. And that's one of the reasons is because the electricity prices are regulated by the State Public Utilities Commission. And so they have to improve increases in electricity rates, and that kind of mitigates the increase in those prices, whereas fossil fuels, natural gas prices are based on the supply and demand and global markets and sometimes events that send their prices skyrocketing and falling up and down. So electricity rates are generally more stable. Electrifying our home also makes a difference for the health of, I mentioned people, but also the planet. So climate change and negative environmental outcomes from human activity. That's a big problem, but our actions are small, but they do matter, and we can all take part in contributing positively to helping the climate by transitioning our home away from gas equipment to electric equipments and take those small but necessary steps to do so. So this all sounds great, but there are challenges, right? Electrification can be confusing. And a lot of you are here because you probably have some of these questions um, popping around in your brains, like how do I decide which projects to pursue? There's a lot of projects. Which one do I tackle first? What are the options and how do they compare to each other? What should I consider when looking at them? What resources and financial incentives are available to help? Because some of them are very expensive projects. And who do I talk to for guidance, bids? What can I do myself? What's feasible? And so there are a lot of questions that through this webinar we'll try to answer for you all. So some of the key projects for electrifying a single family home, I mentioned a lot of these on our agenda, but weatherization, heating, home heating, and cooling as well. But we'll talk about why heating is um, one of the the big fish. Water heating as well, clothes drying, and finally, we'll talk about cooking as one of those projects. And I will pass it off to Matthew to talk about weatherization.
Thank you, Sean. Next slide here. So, when we're talking about electrification, why are we talking about weatherization? Well, the big reason is that the average home in Minnesota, 72% of all the energy used in that average home goes towards heating. So we're taking all of the energy used from the year, about 70% goes towards heating. That's because we have a really cold winters here, and it takes a lot of energy to heat our homes. So compared to the rest of the country, heating is an even bigger piece of the puzzle. Next slide. So when we're talking about how to save energy and boost sustainability in our homes, there are two main questions. One is how much heat do our homes need, and how are we providing that heat? So weatherization answers that first question. Next slide. So what is weatherization? Weatherization refers to treating the parts of the home that keep the outdoor air outside and keep the conditioned indoor air inside. So that includes insulation in the walls and the attic, air sealing all of the air leaks, and addressing windows. And weatherization is really important for electrification because it makes it easier and more effective. And I'll explain why. Next slide. So, reasons to insulate and air seal are that homes built before 1980 often lack wall and attic insulation. If your camera is on, just put your hand up if your home was built before 1980. It's most of the homes in Minnesota, so probably a lot of us here, especially if you're from Minneapolis. So it's likely that your home may be lacking insulation. And if it is, that is a huge opportunity. You can, by insulating and air sealing, you can save on average 18% of your heating and cooling costs. It's also a very cost-effective upgrade because of those energy savings you'll see on your bill. They will pay for the cost of the project over time. Insulation also improves comfort. We've all been in cold, drafty rooms and homes, and what if we were cozy all winter long? Insulation and air sealing can also prevent ice dams from forming, and it sets up a home for electrification. Next slide. So, I think a lot of people are familiar with insulation. It's the fluffy stuff in the attic and the walls. But what is air sealing? Air sealing refers to sealing up all of the little cracks and gaps in your building's envelope to make sure heat is not escaping. So that looks like sealing around light fixtures that are in the ceiling, your attic hatch, where a bathroom fan exits the home, chimneys, etc. And then also in the basement and windows and like where your dryer vent exits. All of those areas are areas where the heat in your home can escape. And in an old unair sealed home, that adds up to having about a 2 by 2 foot hole in your house. That's like having a window open all winter long. So air sealing is a really important step towards improving your home's efficiency. Next slide. And this is a picture from a Home Energy Squad energy audit. They use an infrared camera to identify air leaks. And we can see on the right here, the purple is where all the air leaks are happening. So the attic hatch is super leaky, where the wall meets the ceiling is leaky. And then even that tongue and groove paneling on the ceiling. So just by using caulking and spray foam and other methods to seal those up, we can save a lot of energy. Next slide. So I've been saying weatherization is important for electrification, but why is that? And the big reason is that in order to electrify your space heating, it's important to first reduce how much energy your home needs to stay warm. So weatherization reduces the heating load of a house on average 18%. And that means that a heat pump can work much more effectively to heat your home because it needs to put less heat energy into your house. Next slide. So I saw we got a couple of questions about incentives already. There are a lot of incentives available for insulation and air sealing. So I'll go into a little more detail on this slide, and then we're also going to mention the incentives on all of the other measures that we're going to be talking about tonight. So CenterPoint Energy offers a $3,000 rebate, up to $3,000. If XL is your primary heating provider, then you would use them. Until December 31st of this year, the federal 25C tax credit is still in place, up to $1,200. So if you're thinking about making an upgrade, now is a great time because that tax credit is going away at the end of the year. And then for low income and income qualified homes, next year there is expected to be federal rebates administered by the state, but those will be spread statewide, so availability may be limited. There are a number of lending products, and then many cities across Hennepin County also have rebates. So check out your city. All the ones that have rebates are listed here. Next slide. And then I'm putting the link to our incentive calculator into the chat here. So you can put in your zip code and your home's information and find all of the incentives that are available to you. And AMI means area median income. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Matthew. I was just trying to tackle one of those questions in the chat, but I'm back. Talking about heating. So we talked about weatherization and air sealing and why that's really crucial for heating. So let's get into heating. So we discussed how much heat our homes need and maybe ways to mitigate the amount of heat that we might consume through insulation air sealing. But how exactly are we going to provide that heat? I saw a question in the chat about some different types of heating. So let's get started. So we showed you this graph already, but we really want to emphasize how weatherization and heating work in conjunction with each other and how it affects home energy consumption. And so, again, the Minnesota average is almost double the national average, and that's because of the long, cold heating season. So if you're looking for a big project to tackle or a big user of energy in your home heating system is really crucial. So Hugh here, you can raise your hand or you can react or whatever. Who here has heard about heat pumps? I know you filled out some of you were interested in heat pumps on the registration form. So I know quite a few of you have. So heat pumps are getting increasingly more and more common in Minnesota, and more people are hearing about them, more people are talking about them. But it would not be uncommon even just a few years ago to that very few people had heard about them before. So what are heat pumps? Maybe you've seen these before outside someone's house, but what are they? What do they do? Well, a heat pump is like a two-way air conditioner. It moves heat through refrigerant, either from inside your house, outside of your house, like probably if you have a heat pump this week, it's been doing that. Or over the summer during the cooling season, it basically sucks the heat or uses refrigerant to transfer heat outside and then cools the air inside your home. But in the winter, which is coming up on us quickly, it will transfer heat from outside to the inside of your home to heat, even when it's very cold. Heat pumps have their limits, and we'll talk about those. But even when it's quite cold outside, there's still heat in the air to take and to warm your house with. So your heat pump will be working hard to make sure that you stay toasty by using refrigerant. And one of the benefits about heat pumps, the big benefits is that they're flexible. So we have what we call ducted and ductless systems. Ducted or central systems, because they commonly incorporate into your central AC, your central heating, have this outdoor unit, which looks like a cube, very similar to an air conditioning, although you'll notice that it sits off the ground. And that is so it can work when there's snow out in the winter. So it's not churning in snow or snow is not blocking it. So it will sit up higher than a traditional AC, but it often replaces your central AC. But it uses that outdoor unit to move that heat to or from the house through those refrigerant lines and to an indoor unit. And that indoor unit sits above the furnace, very similar to a central AC. So if you have one of these systems, you may not really know or notice, you'll notice a difference, but aesthetically, it may not look that much different than the system that you had previously. However, the ductless, or we also call them mini split systems, are those are they look quite different, and you've probably seen them before. These are very common with boilers or electric baseboard heat because they are not incorporated or they don't use a duct system. They're ductless, and these are great for homes without central AC, but you still want cooling. Maybe you're using window units or there is no AC in the home. But those outdoor units are like what we saw in the photo when I asked you who'd heard about heat pumps. They kind of look like a big suitcase. Sometimes if it's a big system, they'll look like two suitcases on top of each other. But again, you'll see that stand that they're sitting up higher than the snow line. But the same thing, they use refrigerant lines to move that heat in or outside of the house, And those indoor units, which are commonly called heads or cassettes, those are sit in rooms or areas within the home, whichever you want to heat or cool. You may have more than one inside your home, or some people have them just in one area of the home that uh, doesn't isn't well heated or cooled. But yeah, that's what they look like on the inside, and yeah, they're commonly used with boilers or electric baseboard heat. I alluded to this earlier, but heat pumps are most efficient in hot to cool weather. And so when the temperature gets colder, this does lower the heat pump's efficiency. So this graph on the y-axis going up and down, we have the heating provided by the heat pump and the amount of BTUs, British thermal units per hour, which is just a measure of heat. And at 65 degrees, we're at 40,000 BTUs. But you'll see on the x-axis, we have 65 all the way down to -15 as it gets cooler outside. And like I said, it pulls heat from that cold outside air or cool outside air. But as the temperature goes down, there's less heat to pull from the outside air. And so it's working harder and harder to heat your home with the heat that it's moving from outside to inside your home. So it goes down and down and down. And by the time you get to, those negative temperatures, which we see not infrequently in Minnesota, the heating is providing maybe about a third at -15 what it was at 65. So they do get less efficient as the temperature drops. But the good news is that much of the time that we need heat is for mild to moderately cold weather. We tend to think of Minnesota weathers as perpetually negative or 0 degrees to negative, even 30 degrees, and weeks on end of just brutal cold. But actually, about 80% of our cooling season, or heating season rather, cold season, but heating season, is above 20 degrees. And so that remaining 20% is when it's below 20 degrees. So it kind of sticks out in our mind, but the reality is 80% is above 20 degrees. And a heat pump can work quite well in those temperatures, and it can still heat. Most of them can heat your home or can heat a building when it's above 20 degrees. So you can have a heat pump working for 80% of the cold season. A heat pump can either partially or fully electrify your heating needs, and that depends on another type of system or two types of systems. So we talked about ducted and ductless systems. We also have hybrid and all electric systems. A hybrid system is a heat pump that is paired with a fossil fuel system, so a furnace or a boiler, for example. And so, one of the benefits of these hybrid systems is that they can keep energy bills neutral or lower. And they also significantly reduce household carbon emissions. So we showed that graph, the 80-20%. If your furnace were running for that 80% of the time, um, that would be natural gas use for 80% of the time, whereas you're replacing that 80% um, with a heat pump and 20% for the furnace. So that's a significant reduction. One of the drawbacks, though, is that the setup can be complicated depending on your existing equipment. So sometimes, depending on the furnace or the boiler system you have, it can be difficult to make those compatible or to have integrated controls. And so that can be a challenge to coordinate that and make that function effectively with a hybrid system. The heating and cooling with a hybrid system. So this is what it would look like throughout the year. So during the summer, which kind of feels like we're still in summer. I think we're almost technically in fall, but the heat pump cools. And then when fall hits and temperatures drop, the heat pump can heat for you during those mildly cold temperatures. When winter or the depths of winter hit, your furnace or your boiler will do the work for you below a certain temperature. And it depends on what system you have and how efficient it is. It may be 25 degrees, 30 degrees. Some of these systems can go down quite low, in fact, to negative temperatures. But you do need a backup system, whether that's a furnace or we'll talk about electric or a boiler or an electric system. And then when spring comes around, the heat pump can do your heating again. All electric system. So what is an all electric system? Well, this is a heat pump that is paired with what's called an electric plenum. And the plenum is just an electric resistance heating element that sits inside. You can see this furnace inside someone's home. It's just a resistance element that heats your home. It's an electric, basically a large electric resistance element that sits above uh, your electric furnace. So the benefits of having an electric heat pump with an electric furnace is that it can be simpler to set up because it's all part of one electric system. And this is a good way to maximally reduce your household carbon emissions. So you're using electricity 100% of the time rather than, for example, 80% of the time. That's one of the big benefits. And there are also some drawbacks in that winter heating bills are more expensive because I think saw someone mentioned in the chat. Yes, electricity um, is more expensive than natural gas. Generally is, um, and historically has been. So if you're heating with electricity, you almost certainly pay more than someone with natural gas, although you probably pay less than someone with propane. But winter heating bills can be more expensive. Although I will also mention Xcel Energy has a new space heating rate for people with primary heating systems that are electric that is making that maybe not so much the case anymore, or it's more cost competitive. But we can talk about that later. A cold climate heat pump is also necessary, which is a high efficiency heat pump which is also tends to be more expensive. So it's a higher upfront cost for such a system. And the heating and cooling with an all-electric system looks very similar. In the summer, we're cooling with the heat pump. The fall, we're heating with the heat pump. In the winter, you have a heat pump, but also you have that electric secondary heat for when those temperatures dip. And then again in spring, the heat pump springs into action and does your heating. Heat pump incentives, the typical upfront cost for a system, um, depending on the size, depending on the efficiency. I've had people ask like, well, what's a rough estimate? And I'm like, well, I can give you a $12,000 range, but for a lot of people, they want something more precise. So the answer is that it really depends. But the rebates are available. Um, there are varied. Some of them are disappearing, but also I'll point to the Xcel and CenterPoint Energy rebate, and that is a rebate from both Xcel and CenterPoint that adds up to $2,000. Um, and then again, that federal tax credit that's at the end of the year that's going away is up to $2,000. Federal rebates expected in 2026 up to $8,000, and those are depending on income, but those funds are limited and they may go quickly. So it sounds very nice, but approach that with caution. And also, I'll draw your attention down to the bottom of this table, which is a lot of cities are or were offering rebates. Some of their funds have run out, and they may replenish them next year. But anywhere from $5,000 to $4,000 for those municipalities within Hennepin County, and those are also sometimes income dependent. All right, Matthew, I think this is where you take over and talk about some of our other appliances we want to electrify.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, John. So, heating, like I showed earlier, is about 70% of home energy use. But water heating is the next biggest category and also the next biggest gas user in a home. And then cooking and clothes drying are the other biggest energy users typically. Um, Next slide. So, water heating. How do we heat our water? How do we take those hot showers? So, a heat pump water heater, also known as a hybrid water heater, um, is a tank water heating system that uses a heat pump to heat the water. These are Really great pieces of equipment. If you haven't noticed already, we are really into heat pump technology because it is so energy efficient. Heat pump water heaters are over 3 times more energy efficient than standard electric tanks. And they're safer than gas because they don't have any of the risk of combustion gases leaking into your home. Next slide. So how do heat pump water heaters work? Uh, Very basically, cold water will go into your tank, and then that top portion of the diagram here is a heat pump. So it pulls heat from the air in the basement around it, and then moves that heat into the water. So the cold water is heated through that transfer of heat, and then cooler air is dispelled out of the other side of the heat pump, and the hot water is then delivered to the house. Heat pump water heaters also have electric resistance rods inside of them that act as boosters to provide a little extra heat when there's higher demand. Next slide. So how much will it cost to heat your water with a heat pump water heater? Compared to a standard electric resistance water heater, a heat pump water heater can save you anywhere from $300 to $500 a year annually, which is a big deal. And it's because heat pump water heaters are so much more efficient than traditional electric resistance. Compared to a standard gas water heater, a heat pump water heater, you can expect to break even on energy costs or save up to about $175 annually. That's just because the price of gas is different than the price of electricity. But you can expect to pay similar or save a little bit with a heat pump water heater. Next slide. So, there are some good incentives for heat pump water heaters as well. Typically, uh, you can expect quotes between like $4,000 and $7,000 for a heat pump water heater. But there are a number of incentives. The Xcel Energy rebate, the 25C tax credit that's expiring this year, and then those federal rebates and city rebates that Sean mentioned. Next slide. So water heating is really important thinking about the next biggest energy user in a home. But cooking is really important thinking about the appliance that is in the space where you gather the most, the kitchen. Next slide. So induction ranges or induction stoves are a type of electric stove that transfer energy directly into the pan sitting on the stove through a magnetic field. Because of this, they boil water very quickly. They can boil 1 quart of water in about 2 minutes. And the gas stoves and traditional electric stoves take about 6 to 10 minutes. So they're super fast. They also cool down super fast as well. So for cooking, they're really responsive, just like a gas stove. So a lot of people who really enjoy cooking and want a lot of control in that process find that induction cooktops provide them, a level of control similar to gas. Because they transfer heat directly into the pan, they don't overheat the cooktop, so can be safer for kids. And if you forget a spatula on the counter on the cooktop, you don't have to worry about it catching on fire or melting. They're also really easy to clean. And the one important thing to note here is that the cookware must be magnetic. So in order for the cookware to receive those electromagnetic currents to heat up, they need to be stainless steel, cast iron, or ceramic coated steel, or iron, like a Dutch oven. So aluminum cookware and copper cookware typically are not compatible with induction stoves. Next slide. Another great option for electric cooking is a traditional electric range. They create heat by running current through a heating element. They come in options with the coils or just a glass top, but they're widely available and affordable, and they've been around forever. They are less energy efficient than induction ranges, and they're slower to warm up and cool down. Um, so you won't have quite as much control over your cooking. Next slide. But thinking about the stove in your home, one big reason that a lot of people are switching to electric cooking is the health benefits. Gas stoves release hazardous pollutants into your living area, um, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and studies have found that many leak even when they're off. So if you're concerned about indoor air quality in your home, this can be a good project to tackle. Studies have found that children living in households with gas ranges are over 40% more likely to have asthma. And electric cooking just eliminates these issues because you're not combusting gas. So, yeah, a lot of people are motivated by this. I will also say if you love your gas stove, but and you want to keep that, but you want to electrify other parts of your home, that's great too. We're here to help you make the step that you want to make. Next slide. So there are a couple incentives available for induction stoves, far fewer. The main ones that are available right now are from the cities of Edina and Hopkins. Next slide. So the last technology we'll talk about is
You.
clothes drying.
Really quickly, I see we have a hand. I know I've been waiting for a break. I don't know if it's a residual hand. Mary Jane, did you have a clarifying question? You're muted, or maybe it's just,
That might
okay.
have been
Well,
from when we
might
were
have
like,
been,
raise your hand if you
yeah, I saw it
know
and I
about
thought,
this.
oh, I hate to leave someone hanging, but okay, we'll come back to it at the end if it's necessary. Okay.
Okay,
Sorry. Continue.
sounds good. Um, Yeah, and I see the question about requiring a special hookup for these appliances, and we've got a slide coming up on that. Okay, clothes drying. Next slide. So, heat pump clothes dryers, also called ventless clothes dryers, are a type of electric clothes dryer that recirculates warm air to draw away moisture. So they use heat pump technology and they blow warm air over the clothes, condense the moisture out of them, and then that moisture is dispelled through a drain pipe or collected in a drain pan in the bottom. Because they use heat pump technology, they are super energy efficient, and they also do not need to be vented to the outdoors, which a lot of people like. Say you want to move your clothes dryer from the basement to like your main living area. This is a great option because it could go somewhere in your home that isn't on an exterior wall. They're super energy efficient, about twice as energy efficient as traditional dryers. They're gentler on clothes, and they do have slightly longer drying cycles. A typical dryer can dry a load in about 45 minutes to an hour, and a heat pump dryer we see about an hour to an hour and a half. Next slide. Another good option for clothes drying specifically is a classic electric resistance dryer. They use electric heat from coils and they dry clothes quickly. They do need to be vented to the outside, but they're widely available and come at a really broad range of price points. They do use about twice as much electricity as a heat pump dryer. Next slide. And similar to stoves, there are fewer incentives for clothes dryers, but one from the city of Hopkins. Next slide. So that covers the main areas of a home to upgrade to electrify, weatherization, your heating system, your water heater, your clothes dryer, and your stove. So now I'll pass it over to Sean to talk about how to get your home ready for electrification.
Thank you, Matthew. So before you undergo your electrification journey or take on some of these projects, depending on what type of home you have, what type of setup, you may need to do some pre-work to to begin. These common upgrades needed by older homes may include upgrading your service panel, which you can see a picture of on the right, and modern wiring. So these projects will make it possible to add electric equipment later on, because they will allow for additional electrical load, or your wiring will allow for additional electric flow. So a common upgrade is from a 100 amp to 200 amp service panel. Um, some older homes have maybe like a 60 amp panel. I know we have a lot of people from a couple different neighborhoods with some older homes, so it could be maybe around 100, maybe 150, but it's probably in that lower amperage range. So what we suggest is to consult an electrician regarding the needs for your home, and they will consult or give you advice accordingly to what you might need. And as I mentioned, it may also require new wiring. So switch from gas to electric appliances often requires new 240 volt wiring and capping gas lines. I answered a question in the chat. If you have a gas stove or a gas dryer, you may or may not have a 240 volt outlet behind that appliance. So you want to check and make sure that you have that before you go out and make that purchase. And these would be 240 volts for heat pump water heaters, electric stoves, and electric clothes dryers. And those are both for induction and traditional, and heat pump and traditional for the stoves and the dryers. There are heat pump water heaters that are available now, with 120 volt models. So that's a possibility. You can look into those. They have their pros and their cons. So, and we have, there's a webinar for that if you want to know more. But they are available. But with the stoves and the dryers, you'll need the 240 volts. And again, consult an electrician or an HVAC technician about what you may need. Some of these, you may have an outlet, and if it's not being used or hasn't been used in a while, it may not lead to anywhere. So you'll want an electrician to inspect that and make sure that it is running, and that it is able to house one of these appliances. Electric panel upgrade incentives. So sometimes people want to move into electrification, but they realize they need a panel upgrade. And the upfront cost for a panel upgrade can be pretty significant. This says $2,000 to $5,000. I've heard it's probably closer to that $5,000 mark at this point, just because things have gone up very quickly, even in the last few years. So yeah. But the good news is that there are quite a few incentives available for panel upgrades. Excel offers up to $1,500. That tax credit $600. The state of Minnesota is going to start with grants for $3,000, and we don't have a date available on that, but Department of Commerce would be the website to check for that. And if you live in Hopkins or Plymouth, then that would be you get $500 to $2,000. For wiring, with the Inflation Reduction Act rebates, up to $2,500. But again, those funds will probably be limited, but there are some decent incentives available for this. So don't let it be an obstacle. Okay, resources. So there are a lot of resources available, and you're getting all this information. You're probably thinking, okay, where do I start? This is a lot. I don't know. I have these projects maybe in mind. Who do I talk to figure out what I prioritize if one thing needs to be done before another? Well, what you could do is call or email an Electrify Everything advisor. And this is a service through Electrify Everything that is cost-free and pressure-free. The advisors don't make money or commissions off of selling you anything or referring you to anyone. They just simply help you complete your projects, answer the questions that you may have, and they're experts on financing and incentives, and what's available, rebates, and also they can refer you to contractors who are experienced and knowledgeable about some of these things that are kind of novel in some of their industries. So there's a number and an address, and we'll leave you with these slides. So you don't have to frantically type or write them down right now. But before you do that, you might want to schedule a home energy squad visit to figure out what's going on in your house and get a report with that cool infrared camera image of some areas in your home. So this is a low-cost utility program to help you find out what systems and equipment your home has to assess whether you need weatherization. They'll look at your insulation levels. Since a lot of you have older homes, that's probably a mystery, or it could be a mystery. So they'll check in your attic and also in your wall to see what you might need or what if you need some insulation. And they can also connect you with contractors and incentives. Speaking of contractors, there are current existing contractor networks of people who are experienced and knowledgeable about these types of technologies. So there's what's called the Minnesota Air Source Heat Pump Preferred Contractor Network, and that's people who have taken a test and they've taken a class, and they're licensed and bonded, and they want to learn about air source heat pumps. They've worked with air source heat pumps, and so which not every contractor has, and so they can refer you to these contractor networks, or you can go to the contractor network and find one near you. There's also insulation contractors that partner with the Home Energy Squad who do a good job insulating um, homes. And we have the heat pump water heater installer network, which was actually created by Electrify Everything Minnesota because we saw a need for a network of contractors who are working with this new technology and also have experience, which is key with those installing those heat pump water heaters. Since winter is coming and energy bills are certainly certain to rise, we have resources available. There are energy assistance resources available that help pay for winter bills and sometimes emergency heating repair or replacement. And this is available for renters and homeowners. There are income eligibility guidelines. Here's a chart. We also have these links in the presentation. So we'll send these slides out and you can access those. Also, weatherization assistance. You saw that weatherization can be expensive, but if you are income qualified, you may qualify for free weatherization of your home. So, summary of where to get started. Well, if you haven't had one yet, I would suggest that you schedule a home energy squad visit to learn more about your home and the things that are going well in your home and the things that could help you save energy, save money, and projects that you could eye to tackle. And if you've had the home energy squad visit and you want to know which projects to address first, which contractors maybe are doing this kind of work, which rebates you can stack and combine, well, I would talk to an Electrify Everything advisor. They are experts on this. And again, that's a cost-free and pressure-free service that is offered. And that's all we have for our presentation. So thank you all for attending. I hope you learned a lot, and we will open it up for Q&A at this point.
Yeah, so thank you all so much. We want to answer your questions live here, so keep throwing them in the chat. Um, we have a couple other webinars coming up October 14th and 21st that dive into more detail into heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. So please check those out. And then also we have please take our survey. We want to hear what you liked about this and what we can improve. So 2 plugs, and then let's jump into questions. So one question that came up a couple times is the topic of homes that have boilers with radiators. and how those homes can be electrified. So the short answer is that this is a great setup for a lot of people. And typically what it looks like is you get ductless mini split heat pumps. So like Sean described, you've got that condenser outside, and then those uh, heads on that go high on the walls in different rooms in the house. So those can provide heating and cooling. So this is a great way to get air conditioning in a home with a boiler instead of using those really loud window air conditioners. And then in the wintertime, you can use the mini splits to heat your home until it gets to whatever the switchover temperature you decide is, and then you kick on the boilers to provide that supplemental heating. So this is also tends to be cheaper because the HVAC technician, if your boiler is working, doesn't really need to do anything with the boiler. They're just installing these mini splits. So it can actually be a pretty simple install. Great. I'm also seeing this question from Carla. With heat pump water heaters, will I notice a difference in how quickly my water heats up? Any issues with multiple hot water needs at the same time, like washing clothes, multiple showers, etc. Yeah, great question. Am I gonna get a cold shower or is my shower gonna be hot? That's like the main thing you want out of a water heater, right? And the short answer is that heat pump water heaters provide a very comparable amount of hot water compared to other tank water heaters. Gas water heaters do reheat the water a little bit faster than heat pump water heaters. So if your home is a large energy or a large water using home, you may want to get a heat pump water heater that's just one size bigger than your current gas hot water heater. But typically, people don't notice a big difference between the two. Right. Can heat pump mini splits run off a thermostat or are they manually operated? Great question, Ellen. So, um, a a a hybrid system that uses a furnace and a heat pump, and they're all going through that one air handler. Those all have one integrated thermostat. For a boiler, the most common thing is that you switch between the two manually. So your heat pump has a thermostat and your boiler has a thermostat. There are some options on the market that can integrate the two, um, but typically those are less. People find it that it's easy enough to just switch manually between the two. And then how many mini splits would a old Minneapolis home need? And it really comes down to the size of your house. Um, you would not need a mini split head for every room in the house. Typically, you know, one example is like you've got one for the living room, kitchen, and then two for the bedrooms, for example. So like three mini split heads total is one common option. And an HVAC contractor will be a great way to figure out where those should go. Okay. Um, the Home Energy Squad is available for renters. So yeah, renters can get a Home Energy Squad visit and get all the free installs and the report that comes with it. We will be sending out the slides. And got a couple of questions about electric panel sizing. Typically, a 100 amp panel is enough to electrify your home. Um, a 150 or 200 amp panel is like your 100, you for sure can do it. Assuming you have a relatively you don't have like a 10,000 square foot home. That's kind of a different beast. But for most homes, 150 is great and 100 is even enough. And an electrician is a great person to contact to figure out your panel capacity. Great. I had an audit a few years ago. Am I eligible for another one? Great question. So every 3 years, you're eligible to get a new home energy squad visit. So if it's been 3 years since your last visit, you can get a new audit. That said, if you call the Electrify advisors, they can pull up your audit report from your last visit and take a look at your house and answer questions. So it might be best to just contact the Electrify advisors and start there because they may have all the information you need on your home if you haven't made any big changes since your audit. Okay, for radiators and for heating, there are air to water heat pumps. See Arctic heat pumps as an example. Is anyone doing more affordable ground source in Minnesota? Yeah, great question, Eric. And we actually dive into this in more detail in our October 14th webinar. That's all about heat pumps. Um, but the short answer is that we're seeing that both air to water heat pumps and ground source heat pumps are coming in at a much higher upfront cost here in Minnesota than air source heat pumps, which we talked about today. So that upfront cost is still quite a bit higher. Who are the Electrify advisors? They are folks on our team that Sean talked about who are there to for their free service available to you, and they can answer any questions you have about home upgrades. So maybe you want to know which contractors should I would be good to reach out to, or I got 3 different quotes on a heat pump and I'm having a hard time comparing the differences between them. You can send them the quotes. They can, help explain what's going on there. They're also really good at helping you navigate getting all the incentives that are available to you. So I'm going to put the link in the chat again here. And Suzanne, great to hear that the advisor you talked to was great. Love to hear it. Awesome. Yeah, from Andrea, can you share the space heating rate link for Excel Energy again? Yeah, Sean, would you be able to dig that up?
I'm digging. Let's see.
Cool. And for context for everyone, the Excel Energy electric space heating rate is a huge deal if you have a heat pump. So even if you have a hybrid system where you have a gas backup, as long as electric is your primary heating system, your winter heating electric rate will be about half what it would be otherwise. So what this means is that using your heat pump to heat your home goes from being, maybe cost neutral to maybe costing you a little bit more to possibly saving you energy or saving you money on your bills. Um, so that's a development that happened this year. And if you have a heat pump, we strongly encourage you to get on this electric space heating rate. Righty. Well, we're at 7 p.m. We will stick on to answer any more questions that come up, or if we missed a question, please let us know. But we also want to respect the end time of the webinar, so if you need to hop off, now is a great time. And thank you all so much for the awesome questions, your engagement, and we'll be on it for a few more minutes. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Kristen. And Sean, we can probably stop the recording.
One second. Let's see.